Welcome to my tool shed, where the flow don't stop. Flows the host and we rise to the top. Sizzling fade, shaping the glow. It's office hour, it's time
Okay,
to
Notice,
show.
start the stream. Hey, Damon. Nice to have you on the show. Was that
Hey.
dramatic enough?
That was pretty cool. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I'm gonna
It's
need
made to be over the top.
That's all right. That's the way it's supposed to be, for sure.
Where are you calling me from?
Today, Sedona, Arizona.
Yeah.
So I'm traveling for the last couple of weeks and just slowly making my way back.
You have
home.
a very non-Arizona background behind you.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Sedona is kind of up in the
Oh,
mountains.
nice.
Yeah. So there's a lot of greenery, but it still has a desert feel as well. There's
Yeah,
it's a
I've
beautiful
only
place.
been in Phoenix and it didn't look like this.
No. If you ever get a chance, Sedona is a jewel of the earth. Like it is gorgeous.
Right.
Yeah, and there's lots of foreigners who travel here too.
Well, the US is a wonderful place to travel. It's endless with different scenery and to discover. I really loved my time there. I've been multiple times, coast to coast, but not to
Nice.
that place yet. So, what
Nice.
brought you to Notice in the first place?
Gotcha.
What kind of use case were you interested in?
So I've been a business owner for probably 22 years. I like to move fast, break things. I like to innovate very quickly. I've been on Notion for about almost literally probably 4 to 6 months after they really first launched, and they rebranded. Run multiple businesses on it, and Notice appeals to me because it's a way for me to get more done, be more productive, take advantage of the creative thoughts when they come. That's huge for me.
Fantastic. And were there some specific use cases that you were most interested in when you discovered the website?
Several, but the couple that my team and I are really focused on this month is automating the process of our newsletter, which comes out weekly, being repurposed into lots of social media posts and having those post out on our social media channels. So that's one. Got that set up earlier this week. A second is to be able to rip our newsletter apart and be able to post that through automations. And this is one thing I want to talk with you about a little bit further is Notice reoccurring reminders, automations, things of that nature. So having Notice handle some of that for us as well, repurposing that out to our blog. So yeah, and then a third is, it normally takes me a couple of hours to produce our newsletter. And I've learned a lot from you in terms of how to contextually train AI, specifically Notice in our Notion database, to know how to interact with our databases, how to interact with our pages, what we want done, et cetera. And so we've really gone to work since joining Notice, which has only been like a week, to create the training and statuses and descriptions and things of that nature. And it's working very, very well.
Okay, fantastic. And how can I help today? What specific things you want to tackle with me today?
Yeah, so let me take a look back at my notes here. So I've got a couple of things, and these are going to be somewhat Notice related, but partially not. And we're running into a little bit of roadblock to be able to use Notice as effectively or fully as we can. And so, why don't we start off with an easy one? And that is, we've got, I think, 7 social media channels. We followed your advice on setting up Notion Social, and it's working very, very well. My question for you is, how do you best recommend giving training the Notice AI to create an X post or versus a LinkedIn post versus an Instagram or Threads post. Today, what I'm doing is I just put a whole series of instructions in our post database that links to Notion Social. And so there's a little section for general for all the posts, and then there's a section for LinkedIn, a section for a LinkedIn company page, a section for Instagram, etc. And it's not performing quite the way that I would want. So kind of turned over to you and just see what do you recommend?
Well, it's good that you mentioned, because I was working on this just the other day with another user, Andrea, and he was trying to do very advanced things with Notice into managing his post, and was also getting mixed result. And what we realized is that I had capped the custom prompt for the database, so they were being basically squeezed. Most of his instructions were not followed because Notice never had access to this. So the first thing we changed, I think yesterday or the day before, was increasing the custom prompt in the database to, I think it's 5,000 characters. Now I've aligned this to automation, custom prompt, everything is 5,000 characters. I have to put the limit somewhere because some people might have templates that they've downloaded on Notion where the template creators put how to use the template there, and might be overly long. But that should help. That's my first advice. It's not really an advice, that it should work better since basically today. So you might just have to manually relaunch a sync to make sure that it gets your last version of a prompt. Um, I've kept things very simple on my end, and I plan to do things more advanced. But right now, I basically post the same things on all platforms, and the only thing that I've instructed Notice is which platform not to post when the content is not compatible. So, for example, if I'm posting like an image post, then I'm just telling Notice, well, for image post, I don't want you to schedule the platform to be YouTube, because YouTube doesn't support image posts. So only do Instagram, X, and LinkedIn, for example. But
Okay.
I realized that things are a bit more complex when you want to really deep dive into the specificity of the platform. One example that I like is I like to use on X, I like to use threads. And there are very specific ways to present threads on Notion for it to work with Notion Social. So you have to put them in the body of Notion Social and not into the caption, and not use the media field for it to be considered as a thread. And then you have to use line separators blocks to do this. So I've explained that specific case to Notice, but the real way to do this would be, to create one entry for X, one entry for Instagram, one entry for another platform. So here, there's few things. The first thing is that I reached out to the creator of Notion Social, with whom we started working and interacting since I made my first video on his solution, because I think his solution is great. And I asked him, can you write like a custom prompt for this database, so users don't have to do it, because you know the specificity better than anyone else. And it would be nice that you write that prompt and I can review it with you. So people get this as a starting point when using Notice with Notion Social. So that's a first thing that is ongoing. And like there are two different ways. I kept things very simple, and I like I said, I have those very simple prompts. And when things become more complicated for like a specific post, then I'll just go and manually edit into Notion for what I want. And this has enabled me to keep my setting quite lean and simple. But I realize some people want to go more complicated than this, and to really, manage the nook and crannies of those different use case. I don't have hands on there, but my intuition would be, if that's really the goal, would be to create like different Notion social database that are specialized into creating different kind of content. So, the way that it works for Notice behind the scene is that it creates like a tool for each database, and each tool has its instruction. So the moment it selects the tool, it's going to follow the instructions in that tool. So by basically splitting databases into more specific use case, you get to get much more intelligence out of those prompts, because now you basically greatly simplify the job of the LLM. So if I had a database with my LinkedIn posts, then I could explain exactly to Notice how I want my LinkedIn post to be structured, in which fields they should be saved, how they should be split it into threads, and so on. And the good thing with Notion Social is you can connect multiple database to the same account. So that should make this solution feasible, but I don't have first-hand experience on it. What I've seen another user doing, Andrew is doing this and is testing this right now, and we'll see if that works, is that it has created a link to another database that is basically contains each of his channels. And for each channel, he has like a very complete set of his instructions. And basically, this database is linked to his main post database. So what's the Notice is going to have to do whenever you say, hey, can you create a post into LinkedIn? You have to link into the LinkedIn kind of channel types, is going to get that LinkedIn entries in that channels database that contains all your instructions. And then it's going to link this to your new post. And it will load basically the context of everything that is related to LinkedIn in terms of instructions. It's honestly, right now it's a bit of testing and tinkering on that part. I didn't expect people to want to push this so far. I really fell in love with that use case, but for me, it was good enough to keep it simple, because already it was such a life changer to be able to manage my posts directly into Notion. But hearing you, I realized that I'm going to have to give a hand to find good solutions to those things, because everyone's going to have the same solution that wants to use this database, the same problem, sorry.
Yeah, because I think one of the greatest things that Notice, the benefit that it creates is, again, when you're able to offload a task that allows you to be to spend more time in creativity. And if you're able to spend more time in creativity, then you need greater flow, right? And so the ability to set that up so that creativity can flow easily and be packaged in the right way for each channel and all that is really key. What I heard from you was a couple of options. One is to create multiple Notion social databases, basically, and then in the description of each one, here's a full set of LinkedIn instructions in one, here's a full set of Instagram instructions in the other. And then another idea was to set up a relational field to the database that does contain all the instructions for LinkedIn and all the instructions for Reddit or Instagram, blah, blah, blah. What about a third option, which is to use templates? So in the post database, create a template for LinkedIn and a template for, would that work?
Well, the problem is the templates are not exposed by the API. So it's one of the limitation that Notice has, is that it cannot create entries using template. So it cannot see the template, cannot use them. That feature is completely invisible for Notice, because it's
Flo, are you there? Are you there? Okay. Good. Yeah. So I think we've got an answer then, and we'll move in one of those two directions and then do some additional testing.
My recommendation is the one database per things, because I think you can even simplify the Notion social template in that direction, and retain their features. But basically, each database you call like my LinkedIn post, my X post, and then it makes it very easy for Notice to create those posts.
Okay. Your recommendation would have to be to have different Notion social
Yeah.
databases or different post
hmm
databases. Okay. Do you think the analytics would be would the analytics still work the way that you want?
Yeah.
In Notion Social, do
Well,
you believe?
I think
Okay.
it's even better because then instead of just being summed up by different channels, then you'd get like the analytics for each post on each platform.
Gotcha. Okay. Another question is, and this is this might be a little bit above my pay grade, but it's to understand how to set up a reoccurring automation. We post a newsletter every Thursday morning, and so what I'd like to have happen is set up in Notice a reoccurring automation that says, "Hey, every time this property changes to published in this database, go do these things." Right? Can you show me or walk me through how to do that? I've read the instructions, and again, I'm not a developer, so
Well, I haven't announced this feature publicly, but it's already in the L portal. I've released it last week or something like this. I just had the opportunity to test it a few times. I really fell in love with it. I think it's a great evolution of the basic automation that we had that you could just schedule in time. And now it makes it even more useful. I had the same idea than you. Like I said that one that I have right now is that every time I publish a new blog post, then it creates the social media post regarding that blog post that I published, and it schedules it. So I think it's really super cool. I've played with another one that I showed, I think yesterday on the stream to another user, where I used the Notion web clipper to add competitors in a competitors database, and I set up like a
Mhm.
webhook. So whenever there's any new competitors in that database, it triggers a deep search and it writes a blog post that compares my product with their product. And then once that blog post is marked as published in my Notion database, it is actually synced with our Framer website that has a blog that compares each of our competitors with our solution, and it's even synced into the footer of the solution, the footer of the website. So this is something I'm very excited to create a video about, because I think you can really see Notice becoming the Notion automation platform like this, and still keep, I think, a level of complexity that makes it really available and accessible to anyone, and not just people that are passionate about automations or a developer. So let me share my screen and I'll show you how this works very simply. Let's see if my correct
Okay.
screen here. Yeah.
And then
So
also, you're recording this so I could watch this as a live stream later?
yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Okay.
So basically, this is the portal. So you just need to ask the link to Notice to access your portal. And here you have a section called Automations, where you manage all your automations. And what I just introduced last week is that when you're setting up an automation, you already had this option for schedule, but now you can activate this option for a webhook. And once it's saved, it's going to give you a unique URL that basically, whenever that URL is called, it's going to trigger whatever you put here in the automation field. So to give you a concrete example, this is the one I've created for my competitors. So I wrote like a detailed prompt saying that, hey, for every new competitor, I want you to perform a deep search, and then a file search on the features that are offered by Notice, which are in my Notion database. I want you to generate a funny cartoon for the header image. You need to upsert in the blog database, follow this style of blogs, those sections. And then I put a few rules. And then I ask Notice to get back to me by email whenever he does this. And then I have this webhook URL. And basically, if I copy this webhook URL and go into Notion, I can open up my new competitors database that I've put in my Notice workspace. So I've created this database. And so here this database is populated automatically whenever I use the Notion web clipper. So I'm browsing a website, I find someone doing something interesting in my space, I just click it and it will create a new entry. So what I did is you go into the automation here, you create a new automation, and then you can select the conditions that you want to have. So it can be page added, or it can be any properties set to anything. For example, in my blog use case, it could be like whenever I set my blog entries to published, that should be the trigger. And then in the do section, you select the webhook option, and you just pass your link here and select which properties you want to pass to notice. And that's as simple as this. Now, whenever here I create a new entry, it will call that URL, and that URL will execute the instructions that I showed you before. And below these instructions will be attached this context. So which competitor, which URL. And it basically, the best way I can explain this is that it's like if you were sending a message to notice with all of those instructions plus the name of your competitors at the below by email, and then you receive the answer by email. And so notice can perform all of this autonomously and get back to you. That is as simple as that.
Gotcha. That totally makes sense now. Appreciate it. Let's see. I'll look here and see if there's anything else. Yeah, and I think you answered my other question too, which is maybe how to set up a reoccurring task to perform a series of steps, and it's just the same thing, but just set the reoccurring or the schedule flag. Yeah, so
Yeah,
got it.
exactly. It's a deceiving, very powerful feature, because like the idea was given to me by ChatGPT a while back when they introduced GPT task, where you could schedule a prompt. But the problem is ChatGPT didn't have access to any tool to make this very interesting, apart from the
Yeah.
web tool. So sure, you could get a summary of the latest games during the weekend, but that's basically it. But on the other hand, Notice has a growing library of tool that makes it more and more powerful to handle things autonomously. So if you could only schedule those, that would be super interesting. And the first use case that I worked on was, receiving like a summary for my day of the task that I have to complete, working on doing the same thing at the end of the week, sending me a summary of everything that I completed in the week. And then it kind of grew, but then at some points I realized, well, wouldn't it be cool that those things happens based on other triggers that happens in my Notion workspace? And the cool thing with the using webhooks is it's very simple. It's as simple as copying like a URL, but it's also compatible with everything. You can use it into Notion webhooks, but you can also set up a Zapier automation that will get, anytime you enter a new line on your Google sheet, that it triggers a webhook and sends the content of that line to Notice. So it really opens up Notice to the rest of the world. And because it opens up Notice to the rest of the world, it also opens your Notion to the rest of the world. So I think that opens up a bunch of possibilities into automation. But my ultimate goal is to create eventually those I call them blueprint, where you'll be interested in automating your blog, for example, or your newsletter or your competitor analysis or something. Basically just end up on Notice and say, oh, I like this use case, and just click install, and it will guide you to give Notice the authentication for the tools that it will need to do this, but it will also create the automations for you with the correct prompt that has been tested and works well outside of the box, but still retain the ability to go in that prompt and say, hey, actually, I don't want to review my day and my task at 10 a.m. every morning. I want to do this at 8 a.m. And I don't want them to be presented this way, but I want them to be presented that way. And I think like I have tons of use case that comes to me, especially around task management. I think just with this set of features could really bring build Notice to be this kind of task coach that comes to you every morning. Even you call it and you kind of organize your day, and then it just handles time boxing things for you and checking back on you. I think with the set of features that I've put out in Notice right now, you can already do all of this. You just need to tinker. And yeah, the next few months will be about not having to tinker to do it, having it like basically out of the box in some kind of store catalogs of interesting stuff to do.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree. I think we're just scratching the surface. I find myself just scratching the surface on what's possible. Even as we talk, I just get more inspired about more advancements, more automation. And you and I think along the same ways, which is it's all about the contextualization of information and um, using that information for personal purposes, or in my case, it's more business growth purposes. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's been I can start like at first it was difficult even for Notice. I use my tools all day long, and I think that's what makes the product progress. Is that I think if the founder and if the developers they're not using the tools, they don't see the weakness of the tool. And so because I really love working on my own and I want to avoid having to manage other people, I much rather manage my AI agents at this step. Um, I always try to find, okay, whatever I'm spending my week doing and how I could make this a bit more automated so I don't have to do it. And I used to, yeah, I built my previous company I was CTO and I really automated everything, but this was before AI, and so all of the automations they worked great until they broke basically. But with this new style of automation, I think you get also more mixed results. You have to intervene a bit more, you have to correct a bit more, but you can correct things that you can automate things that you couldn't automate before. And
Mhm.
and you basically go from spending 10 hours doing something to spending 30 minutes doing that thing. And you can do this in so many different areas. So for me right now, it's my monthly newsletter, it's the change log, it's the social media post, and I have to produce a lot of content to be visible out there. It's creating new ads. Recently, I've made a live stream where I showed how you could use Notice to create a process to basically copy your competitors' ads, or just go on Facebook ads library and send images of ads to Notice and ask it to reproduce the same thing and plan it for you. Um, it's my blog, it's the website, it's many things, and I think it's gonna be more and more. And the cool thing is, it's at the end, it's basically just those prompts. Like, it's really just, I could do it sending this to Notice. It's just like I don't need to have the step of sending this to Notice anymore.
Nice, very nice. Have you do you have maybe any examples, any use cases where you've used automation and Notice and webhooks from other tools, maybe besides Notion Social, that you could share?
So right now I've made 2 or 3 videos on third-party integrations. So I'm particularly interested in third-party integrations where when they connect to Notion and they do something nearly as well as other people are doing in that field, but they do it inside Notion. Because if they can do this 80% as well that other people do it without Notion, the 20% that they're doing it maybe not as well, is totally worth as a trade-off for being able to automate things in my Notion and use my context, because already I'm building my context in Notion. So as I'm automating more things, I'm also having more highly curated content into Notion. And then I'm starting to use that content and reuse that content. So far, I started this series of integrating those workflows. And so Notion Social was the first one. Then I made a video on HelpKit, which is like a platform to create help center and documentation from your Notion workspace. So if you go to help.notice.ai, which is the documentation, it's created by HelpKit, and it's behind the scene, it's Notion database. So I can use Notice and Notion AI. Notion AI is also an important place to play inside this, but I can use those tools to create new Help Center articles and knowledge-based articles for my users. And because I'm doing the product development inside Notion, it already knows most about the features that I'm launching. So it can already write 80% of the help article for me. And then it's I don't have to copy paste anything, it's there. And then I'm announcing the features on X, for example, and then I can just ask Notice to create the post, because it already know how the features work and what's the story behind the features and so on. Same for the blog. Blogging, I use Framer that has because I used it since the very beginning to create the website. It's very powerful. It's maybe too powerful for a lot of users. For me, I wanted like a pixel perfect website that reflected that we're a software company. But it has like the CMS that you can build blogs on top of can be synced with Notion. So this has made me this has made it very convenient. But I know there are a few tools that I want to make videos that are specialized into creating blogs from also Notion database that will be great candidates to be integrated inside Notice and create like some guides like I did for the other solution. One that I haven't made research yet, but I'm interested in is newsletters. I'm pretty sure someone has integrated their newsletter writing software and sending software with Notion. So right now I'm still copy pasting things into Intercom
yeah.
that I use. You have what?
Automated, I mean, really, really finely automated our newsletter creation. And we have a pretty sophisticated newsletter that goes to a pretty sophisticated audience. I think we produced about 18 episodes or issues now, and feel like we're really there, where we can take a creative thought and now create a very full, comprehensive newsletter.
And what's the tool stack that you've used to integrate this apart from Notion?
So we use, apart from Notion, we have our CRM with all of our prospects, customers, all of our sales funnels, emails, SMS campaigns, all that stuff. We use Go High Level, if you're familiar with that tool.
Yeah.
And so there is one manual step, and that is everything is built inside of Notion using Notion AI and Notice. So we're testing kind of a combination of Notice AI and Notion AI. But building the newsletter, there is one manual step, and that is I have a team member who then once it's set to approved, copies and pastes that into Go High Level, which then the workflow picks up and sends out to our subscriber community.
Same thing for me with Intercom. But I was thinking making some research with the big names of newsletter out and the small names if anyone has built some kind of piece of software like Notion Social or HelpKit that just make that last step automatic. So they just you install a template from there, and basically every time you put it into approved, then it already sync with your CRM or wherever you store your contact, and just share it automatically. Definitely when I get some time, I'm in the middle of a big migration because OpenAI deprecated their assistant API that we were using for a year now. And so I'm in the middle of a big migration that is very, very painful, but should bring a lot of goodies into Notice. But I think once I'm done, it's going to be back to creating some content around those big workflows that most SMBs have to do, sending newsletter and stuff like this.
Yeah. Well, we're exploring Beehive as well. So if we come up with with kind of an integration there, I'll be sure to pass it along.
Yeah, I mean the big names are the one that really popped in my mind was Beehive, and what's the other one that we
Something Stack is another big
yeah
one.
yeah exactly that's the one that I had in mind. So I wanted to make like some research to see if we could find this. A while back I contacted a VC after he did a podcast, a very famous French VC, and his idea was fine. He wanted to automate his newsletter based on the voice notes he was creating after meetings, and this was my first step in that direction of like, hey, you realize you could just like get out of a meeting, record a voice notes, and set up an automation in Notice that's so that every and it creates the newsletter for you.
Mm,
I think I
yeah,
lost it for a minute.
I can see it. Yeah, I'm back.
So yeah. Any
Okay.
other topics that you want to cover before I leave you to your exploration?
Maybe just one last question. That is, your live streams. Do you post those on your YouTube channel, or is that somewhere
Yeah.
else?
So they're post on X, LinkedIn, Instagram, pretty much every platform that accept my stream. So yeah, the best place is YouTube because you can just go to the live tab and you can see the history of all office hours. And those office hours have different formats. When there are users showing up, and the conversation is interesting, I post those there. And when no one shows up, because I show up every day into those office hours, but when no one show up, generally I pick up a subject and I go and I explore it. And it's quite funny because yeah, I don't prepare anything. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work so well. But it's really my R&D moment live streamed on my YouTube channel.
Okay, sounds great. Hey, appreciate it, Flo.
Well, it was great to meet you. Thank you for sharing your ideas and what you're doing. I think it's going to interest many other people that have the same challenges. And if you ever want to come back onto that office hours, they are held every day. And there's the website where you can just look at when the next is happening, and you can just join anytime.
Sounds great. Hey, appreciate you, Flo. Appreciate you what you're building
Thank you,
too.
Damon, for the kind words. That means a lot. You have a great day. Bye bye.
You too. Bye bye.